Welcome back to Conversation of the Hearth. Today we're joined by Sifu Keith Fanning from Ireland. This is a exciting opportunity for us to get a little bit of a perspective on Irish culture and martial arts. Although today our focus is going to be on breaking. Sifu Fanning, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on. I know we've been a few weeks trying to get this together, so yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir. No, we're really excited. And Sifu Fanning, this is Mr. Trader. He's one of our instructors at the academy as well as our manager.
Yes, sir.
Um, So today we wanted to talk about breaking, but before we get started,
Mhm.
I'd love to learn a little bit about your past, your history in the martial arts. I know you've been doing this for a long time. Uh,
Yeah,
Sifu Fanny is a ninth degree black belt in Kung Fu. He has numerous world titles and records, many in breaking. He is the Irish director for the International Breaking Federation, as well as the vice president of the Chinese Martial Arts and Culture Association. Um, can you tell us a little bit how you got started in the martial arts, sir, and where it's taken you today?
absolutely. So there's a long story. I'm going to give you a brief shutdown, but 1972, my dad opened his first kung fu school in a town only 5 miles from where I live now. 1972, my uncle Peter started training with him. Subsequently, in 1974, my uncle Peter introduced my mother, his sister, to my father, who became my mother, and I came along in 1976. So I was born into martial arts, and I was born into um, a martial arts lifestyle. And I call it a lifestyle because there is a difference. As we all know, as martial artists, we got hobby martial arts, we got lifestyle martial arts, and it's no right and wrong. It's just a lifestyle choice, and I don't know anything different. So for me, from 1976, at that time, we had my uncle, my father, my mother were all training martial arts. All my dad's students were like big brothers and big sisters to me, and they all kind of looked after me throughout my childhood. So it's been a lifetime of uh, not so much dedication, but a lifetime of only knowing martial arts. I never followed football. I never followed soccer. I played them in school, but martial arts was always my thing, and that was my conversation piece. I think throughout life and even today, still, even we might go to a bar, a local restaurant or a local bar, and I'll talk to people about martial arts because that's what I'm known for and that's what I do.
Yes, sir.
So that's the brief cut down. Throughout the podcast, I hope to tell you some more information, but that's just the quick.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
I want to get to the breaking, but I'm actually already curious. What was it like, training under your father from a very early age? Right now, I have a young son and some daughters who are getting into the martial arts, and I'm kind of the first generation doing my I do come from a family of boxers, but martial arts as like, way of life and all this kind of stuff. I'm kind of the first generation, so I'm curious like what my kids' experience is going to be like moving forward. Any pitfalls that I should be mindful of? What was that experience like with your?
Actually, that's a fantastic question because my dad always said he never wanted to force me to train. He never wanted to, okay, he had his discipline, he had his rules, but he made training fun. And we go back as far as my dad, when I was about 6 years of age, they figured out I was quite strong.
Mm,
So what they used to do is they get me into a pressing position, but elevate my feet on a table or a chair. So I was doing inverted push-ups.
mm.
So doing push-ups at 6 years of age, being able to do 20, 30 of these, and my old man used to say, he look at all his children and go, if a 6-year-old kid can do it, why can't you do it? And but it was nearly like a rivalry, and it was a fun, and it was, you know, it would be a case of we would get to a training session, we go to whichever club we were training at. At that stage, we had about six different schools throughout the greater Dublin area.
Mm.
And so night by night, we would travel in a car that was supposed to hold five people. We might have nine people.
Mm.
It was different back in the 70s. I know it was crazy stuff, but um, he would say, okay, if you do really well at training tonight, you'll get a treat. You'll get maybe, I know you might get a lollipop, you might get a couple of sweets, you might get a nice pop, a nice, ice cream, something, but it was a treat. And it was a great way for keeping me motivated.
Mm.
But one of the biggest motivations I remember was at the start of class we would bell,
Mhm.
and it would be my dad would be facing the whole class. The senior black belt would be to his right, and then all the rest of the students would be grade orientated down in front of him
Mm-hmm.
from the black belt downwards. But
Mm-hmm.
what he used to do was he would pick a student, didn't matter who it was, but at the end of the night, to bow out.
Mm.
So to bow away from the class, he would call one student forward. That one student would take a forward step, give the big bow, the salutation, and they led the bow.
Wow.
So as a little treat, every now and again, he would get me to lead the bow. And that was like, wow, I've been picked, you know. It was, so that to me was a fantastic achievement, you know. And again, it's something so simple, but 43 years later, it's still here in my head, you know. It's still something that sticks with me because it was, I suppose, a highlight. And now I do it with my kids. So now my kids are training with me, and I get them. You know, very quick story, funny story. My daughter, who was very young at the time, she'd been in class, and I'd be doing a countdown at the end of a round. So we'd be doing a kickbox, and we'd be doing something. You know, three, two, one, and all of a sudden she started to figure out this is when people knew to stop.
Mm.
But she didn't understand the three, two, one. Seven, 9, 12, you know, and but everybody, yeah, we all got such a good fun out of it, but it made her really interested and really eager to be there for the class and to make sure that she could call the rounds. So as time went on, as she got a little bit older, she would actually hold the timer and she would press the timer and she 3, 7, 12, and people knew to stop.
Yes.
And it was one of those things where your name might be Keith, but if somebody keeps calling you Mark long enough, you're going to answer, you know.
Yeah.
So that was like that's something that generational has passed from me to my daughter, so from my father to me, from me to my daughters. So that's a long-winded answer to your question. Sorry, but it's, you know, as I said to you, once I get going on martial arts, it just
I'm the
keeps
same
going.
way. You're amongst
I was going to say you're in the right place
yeah,
for
you're
it,
in the right
sir.
place. Now, before we began this conversation, you showed me a medallion that you're wearing around your neck,
Yeah,
which you said was a very precious award that you had won
yeah,
or rank that you had received. Can
yeah.
you tell us a little bit about that?
So there's beautiful history behind it, and I love telling the story. So 1972, my dad opened his school, but he'd been training since 1960. So he'd already had 12 years worth of training. He was quite young. I think he was 23 at the time when he opened the school. And his teacher had been pushing him because he figured out that my dad's hands are very, very strong. And his conditioning regime, he would do. So you're supposed to do it daily. Some days my dad would do it twice, you know, and it was one of those things. So between 1972 and 1974, somewhere in that timeline, my dad went off and was graded to wear and awarded this medallion, this actual medallion. So he was the first white man awarded this medallion outside of the Chinese martial arts, if you like. So he was the first white man to be awarded this medallion as the Iron Palm School, Tisanju. And he wore it proudly for years and years and years. And it was always something I wanted. So when I became of age and I became 18 and I was available, I was now able to do the conditioning because my body had grown to such a point where I can take on the real conditioning and the good conditioning. I started to really figure out how breaking to me became very natural. So it was something he could tell me, and I suppose this is something I've written about as well, the belief in your instructor and the belief in what you're told. So if your instructor said,
Mm.
you can do this, I believe in you, you can do this. And suddenly that belief came into you and you did it. So he said to me, what is your goal? What's your dream? What do you want to do? So I said, well, I want to, you know, first off, I want to break a brick this way, then I want to break a brick with my head. But ultimately, I want to be the best at Iron Palm. I said, I want to beat you. I want to beat everything you've ever done. I want to surpass you. So he said, okay, you know, it's doable. It's going to take you a long time, but it's doable. So let's do it. So fast forward, April 1st, 2006, I got called to London in the UK to go do a breaking. It was like a grading, but it was purely breaking. Okay, so excuse me, I got there. They had 100 bricks, and I had to break everything they'd given me And, some of the stuff I was doing, it surpassed even what I believed I could do, but I was getting through it on the day. At the end of that day, I was awarded this medallion. And my dad said, I don't want to just give you a medallion, I want to give you the medallion. So he passed me down his. Now, through the years, you can see the steel balls that I have on. So each one represents a different arm palm break that I've completed. He did it with links on a chain, but the chain for me, this was something nicer. It's a piece of leather string underneath with the balls onto the string. So each one represents an arm palm break that I've accomplished. And my record at the moment for the arm palm break was 9 patio slabs. It's on my Facebook page, it's on my website. And 9 patio slabs in competition in Connecticut 2017-18. So it was one of my best breaks to date in terms of arm palm. And that's why I can never explain enough to people how much that means. It means more than my black belt. It means more than everything. It's one of those moments in my life where the day I earned that, we had the way they say yin and yang. So we got so much going on. So the day I earned it was the 1st of April 2006. I flew home to Dublin that night to find out that one of my students had just committed suicide. So that was my yin and yang. So I had a really high day with a really low day. So it was it was one of those things. But it kind of combined in a way that we don't remember Owen in a bad negative light. Okay, Owen decided he had enough and he wanted to move on. We remember him in the fact that we had such a good day and that he went to a place that he was happier. So we've kind of turned that around. And that's not trying to make a sad note of that day. It's just trying to give everybody an idea of the emotions that were involved in that day. And I suppose it keeps you grounded too. It's kind of, you have that high of elevation from all the everything that's gone on, and suddenly you're grounded again, and you now got to figure out how to move with it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's an amazing story, and I hope one day I can have a similar impact on my son. I don't have a really cool medallion to give him, but maybe I can find something.
Yes, sir. But it does, and again, I'm going to tell you one father to another, because this is something I do believe that excuse me, I have pieces of broom handles that my dad hand carved into eskrima sticks. He did that 45 years ago with a penknife and a bit of sandpaper. I still have those today.
That's awesome.
But with the hope that I can give them to my daughter and they'll mean as much to her someday. I've a pen knife. I have some training knives. I have books and memorabilia. My father was featured in magazines all across the world throughout the 80s.
Wow.
And I still have some of them today. So those are things that I hope to be able to hand down to my daughter someday. I hope she'll appreciate them. Maybe she won't. She seems to love sitting back and watching podcasts like I do, or feature on. So look, that's just one of my daughters. The other daughter doesn't have an interest at all.
Maybe she'll watch this podcast.
I hope so.
She can see how meaningful it would be.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So let's get to the meat and potatoes of what we want to talk to you about. You have a lot of accolades in breaking, and it's an area that our students are very interested in competing in. We've been going to a lot of tournaments recently in breaking, and so we would love your advice. Can we first? I'm kind of curious, like, what drew you to breaking? There's a lot of events that we can do, forms, sparring, breaking weapons. Why breaking specifically?
Okay, so as I said, the martial arts system that my father was teaching, every single grade from yellow belt to 9th-degree black belt is a break. There's breaking involved in every single grade.
Sure.
So the syllabus itself, I never hide the syllabus. It's out there for everybody to see. But every single strike, whether it's a phoenix eye one knuckle, whether it's a leopard punch, some people call it, everything has a break. Your head, your elbow, your chop, your backhand, ridge hand, every single weapon that you deliver a strike in your martial arts regime, and you must be able to break with. So that was something I knew from a very young age. There's photographs of my first birthday. So it's my first birthday. They're blowing out candles in our front garden. There's about 17, 18 students all standing around in training gear, and all the breaks are stacked up in the garden on the day of my first birthday.
Yes, sir.
My first birthday was just another day to my dad in terms of the students needed to train. They had stuff to do. One of the guys who's standing beside me in the photographs, a guy called Macker, he's unfortunately dead now. He died in 2016. But from my first birthday all the way through to my 2016 when he died, we were competing together. He was one of my coaches. He was he was a mentor. He was a coach. My Uncle Peter is one of my biggest mentors because he's the one that he'll ring me up and say, "You're doing that wrong. Put your foot right. Do this. Get your shoulders working." So for me, breaking has been an element all of my life. There's never been a time where I haven't seen people breaking. But here's the downfall. Here's the downside. I see somebody break a board with a punch and I go, okay. Everybody else goes, wow, he broke a board with a punch. I've been seeing that since I was one. Mm-hmm. It's not taken away from your punch break. It's not taken away from the fact that you've managed to do that punch break. It's just unfortunate for me that I've seen so many breaks that I have to see something really kind of out there or really different to go, well, I like that, that's really cool. So fast forward to 2007, my brother rang me in a really, really hyper, almost like a giddy child. And he said, "You've got to get over here quick. You got to see this YouTube video." And he brought me over to his house and he showed me a YouTube video of Grandmaster Drew Serrano from Connecticut. And he was doing a creative breaking routine. Now that creative breaking routine is like 2 million views on YouTube. And it was the first time I'd ever seen creative breaking and it also competitive breaking. So up until this point, I'd never seen competitive breaking. So I contacted Drew Serrano. I contacted the guys in the USBA and I said, "Listen, guys, I love what you do. This is what I do. Can I come and do it?" And they said, "Yeah, come on over. The US Open is on in July in Florida. If you can be there, we'll let you compete." And the rest is history. Yes. So that was how I got started with competitive breaking. So that led me to an area I'd never done before because we'd never used spacers. We had never used American material. Completely different to what we use. Our blocks that we use are 3 inches thick of concrete, 18 inches long, 9 inches wide. You guys are 16 by 8 by 2 patio bricks. I'd never broken kiln dried boards that you guys break. I'd never broken them before. So when I got out to America, I had to learn everything from scratch. Yes, so it was a big, it was like a cultural shock, but if I could tell anybody now, anybody's doing martial arts, anybody's doing a striking martial art. So we're going to clarify that, striking martial art. I do believe that you should be doing some form of wrist strengthening, finger strengthening, hand strengthening, but also mental strengthening, because people always say to me, is it mind over matter? Is it conditioning? Is it it's everything together. And it's the system that your instructor says to you, by the way, you've trained so well, I know you can do this. And then you got to believe that. So that's it. I know it's a long-winded way, guys. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to get a point across because at the minute, there's a lot of stuff on social media, very, very questionable, very, very cringeworthy, breaking stuff that's going on at the moment. And unfortunately, I'm getting sent a lot of videos going, this guy is doing you a lot of damage, or this guy's doing, why? Just because I break and I'm known for breaking, people know my stuff is real. People know that I break, and when I break it, but I'm quite happy to break, to not break something, because that proves to people the bricks are real. I can have a bad day, and hey, it happens. So yes, for me, breaking is a huge element of every single striking martial arts. Obviously, you're not going to do it with jiu-jitsu or any of the wrestling arts, but I do believe if you're doing a striking art, yes, breaking should be part of everything.
So, how would you compare breaking as an event to other events in martial arts?
Well, the fact that I've fought for years as well, so I fought kickboxing and sanda. Sanda is Chinese kickboxing. So I love the training camp. So the training camp to lead you to a fight, to get that moment of, you do 6 weeks, you do 8 weeks, you're training, you're focused, you know who your opponent is, and yeah, that's everything is going now. I do the exact same today for breaking tournaments. So for me, Grandmaster Jonathan Field in Coburg, Ontario, I went to his tournament 2 years ago. It's a breaking tournament, but it's also, he does a lot of taekwondo sparring, and there was Korean, Japanese, and Chinese forms. So because I do Qigong and I do a lot of Chinese martial arts, I said, I'm going to, just for something different, I want to see what it's like to actually enter into a forms category. So I went down, I'd done a really nice advanced Qigong form, and everything felt really good. It felt quite natural. I was just going with the flow, doing what I do. Didn't have an excitement about it. It didn't, to me, it was, I'm just going out here to relax. This is actually my pre-breaking breathing techniques that I'm going to do. And then I'm going to get ready and I'm going to psych myself up and I'm going to go out there and break. But can I just go into one thing as well? The element of what people see on the internet about breaking. I could name drop all day because I've broken against some of the best guys in the world, some of the best guys in America. I've broken with them all, and I still talk to them daily on Facebook, and the beauty of the internet. But you've got these guys, and they're doing the big breathing, and they're building up the chi, and they're getting everything ready now. Bam, and shit, they're going. Why? They had too much chi, and they couldn't let it go. So when you try and let that chi go, it explodes. Instead of being a focused energy. That's something, it's a little bit advanced for some people, but if you imagine getting a bowling ball and dropping it in a pool of water, what happens? It just explodes. If you drop a dart or a pin in the same body of water, it hits the water and just sinks. So if you think about focusing your energy in the same way, that's when it focused, and that's when it comes. That's when you get the maximum break rather than just breaking the top three in absolute smithereens. You go whole. And one of my dad's masters who came over to watch us, he had us doing some iron palm. But when I popped brick in 6, the bottom one broke first. And what he said was that was the perfect shot, that the chi had gone all the way through every single brick. The bottom one exploded because there was nothing else left to happen, and then the rest fell. So he said that was the perfect break. Now, how many times have I done it? Not as many times as I'd like to tell you, but it was a perfect shot on the day. So that, to me, is how people need to look at, the energy that they need for breaking, the chi levels they need for breaking, and then the focus, how to focus that chi. There's so multi-directional elements that you need to look at. So in an answer to your question, when I done the forums and stuff, some people are so like have you ever been to the US Open? In Florida? It's
for breaking.
It's normally always July 4th week. No, for anything, the US Open at all.
Like for taekwondo?
When you go to the US, yeah, because when you're there, you've got forums, you've got sparring, you've got creative stuff going on, you got creative weapons, musical weapons. People are focused because they have focused for 6-8 weeks on that one form to get it there. So their focus and their intent is perfect. And then you got the breakers who are there just to break stuff, and it's an energy thing that's there. But for me personally, the breaking energy, I find so much more exhilarating. It hypes me more. Where the forms for me were, the more relaxed it was, the form looked.
Well, yeah, it's like it's like a concert versus a fireworks explosion. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. True, yeah.
it's pretty exciting stuff. I don't think anyone would disagree that I mean one of the things we do to recruit new students to our academy is we go around to festivals and we let them try to break a board. We teach them how to do it and they break it, and the look of excitement on their face when they realize that they are able to do it, it's both very exciting and empowering. So I mean you don't have to
Absolutely.
convince me that it's a great event. You know, yeah, it's exciting. It's awesome.
If I can hop in real quick, I
Hmm.
love different ways to think about how we talk through techniques, how we relay techniques to students, and the image you just shared of the bowling ball versus the dart dropping into the pool of water. Like, there are just some things that I hear and I know that's going to stick with me, and I know that that is one that is going to stick with me. It's such a clear image, and you're right, everybody knows you drop that ball, it's going to go kerplunk, cannonball, as opposed to straight through. And to be able to visualize that and take that into the different techniques that you're talking about. One of the questions that I had was, you've already addressed and answered just in your explanation was, all the different strikes, all of the different techniques that you've taught, break with them, test them, put them into that position where you're driving through. Um, so that's something that I'm definitely going to take to heart and continue to hone with my technique as well. So just thank you for that image. That was a really cool image.
No, listen, like I said, yeah, the martial arts number one is something I'm very passionate about, as you can tell. Once you get me going on a conversation, I can keep going and going and going. But when you ask me specifically about breaking or something that I know I can do, and it was actually Grandmaster Hackworth that said to me one time, he said, Keith, he said, what you have to remember is when people talk to you about breaking, he said, you are one of the biggest names in the world for breaking. He said, because when people look you up, everything that's about you is positive about breaking or some record you've had,
Mm,
some world title you've just won. So I was like, okay, because for me, my father kept me very grounded. Humility was a great thing. Like, walk around humble, but always walk around ready. That makes sense. So if you imagine, we don't have a gun culture here. You guys have. For me, that's a very strange thing over there to on your hip, and in a second you're going to load, bang, gone, finished. But
Mhm.
my martial arts is now absolutely gone, depending on how good you are with that. I use my fingers, thumbs, and my hands in the exact manner because I train in or snow. I'll be in my because it's at the house, so I'm not far away from home. I have my conditioning station set up. I have my stretching station set up. I have different things set up in the garden
mm.
under a canopy. My wife will hear me coming out and she'll hear the conditioning start. She'll go, oh, Jumanji time again. All she hears, dum, 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 dum. Because it's me conditioning continuously. Then she'll hear the music. Now, I've gone to the point now, I've actually bought myself a pair of headphones so the neighbors don't have to listen to my music while I train. But, you know, this is how I prepare for every single eventuality. I don't have to key up. I don't have to key up to deliver a strike because at that moment's notice, I can turn it on and explode exactly like that dart hitting the water. And every single blow will deliver with the same precise intent and the same precise energy and the exact same chi because every day I'm training. Some people say it's kind of like a no those I can't think of the name. There is a name on them where the end of the world, and they're always ready for the end of the world.
Yes, sir.
I'm always ready for the fact that I will have to defend my wife, my children, myself, my home.
Yeah.
And that to me was my martial arts. That's my goal in life is to have that readiness. I never ever have to use it. I've
Mm.
had to in the past, but hopefully never to the extremes of drawing, cocking, loading, and firing. Okay, so that's to put it in the gun terminology, but hopefully, but that's where the breaking brings me is that element of never ever be not able to deliver that shot or go, hold on, guys, give me a second. I just want to, now I'm ready. That's to me, it's been able to deliver every single strike with the exact same intent, the exact same explosiveness.
Yes, sir.
Well, not to get too derailed, but you mentioned, Americans have guns and, people in Ireland do not. And it reminded me of a story. I was in England visiting a friend, and they were talking about how you got to be careful if you go out in the street because the guy across the street, he's a terrible gangster. And I said, well, tell me about him. He's like, well, you know what? He got arrested and sent to jail for a couple of years because he went after somebody with a 2x4. I'm like, the heck? Why is someone going after someone with a 2x4? And it's because they don't have guns, so knives and 2x4s and things like, hey, I can handle a 2x4. Like, bring it on, 2x4. So I wish I lived in Ireland. But I will also say to my American viewers that are feeling a little smug, I have guns, but you know what? Unless I keep it loaded like under my pillow, which I'm not going to do with a bunch of children in the house, I'm not going to be ready to use my gun in many situations. Like even if I have like a tank parked outside my house, I mean, I still have to get to my tank, and there's a lot of things that can happen between those two places. If someone broke into my house, I mean, I have a gun, but it's like unloaded, like up on a top shelf. Like, when am I going to climb up there, like get my gun out of the box and start loading it? Like, someone's going to be in my room. Like, I'm going to have to use my unarmed skills. So, you know, they're really important, for those scenarios, but just for empowerment. I mean, I think, and we'll probably get to this in our conversation, but with board breaking, I mean, one of the biggest lessons I take away from it, and we do board breaking at every testing in our school as well. And sometimes people say, well, why are we doing this? And sometimes people break their hands and say, oh, I'm so dumb. Why did I try to break a brick? And I say, no, you're smart because you learned courage from trying to break a brick. That's why, if it was like a magic trick where you were always going to be able to break it no matter what, then what's the point in doing it? Sometimes I have parents come up to me and literally say, but it doesn't hurt, right? There's no chance of them hurting themselves. And I say, no, 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 it does hurt. Even if you do break, it does hurt. And it just breaks more. It just hurts more if you don't break. So it's more incentive to actually follow through and break. And that's one of the important lessons we learn from doing board breaking.
But I think, that's the beautiful part. Like, so we just to quote a few different things, but the whole thing of boards don't hit back, and you've got Bruce Lee said boards don't hit back, and then in Bloodsport, Bolo Young said brick no hit back, and all this, all these type of things. Yeah, okay. I have a video of me in Toronto, Canada, and I went through 9 of 10 blocks with an elbow. Okay, not a bad break. Canadian concrete is so hard. So hard. That last brick didn't go, and the shock wave came all the way back up and hit me in the neck. And it took about, I'd say, 5 seconds for that pain to go away enough that I could straighten my arm. But when you think about boards don't hit back, say that to the guy who broke his hand on a 1-inch point board. Say that to the guy, but like you look on the internet, the unfortunate part about the internet, while I love the internet and I love YouTube and I love information, you've also got trolls. And you've got trolls who are going to say, you're wearing your gi wrong, you're doing this wrong, your belt is tied wrong, that board is already pre-broken, that block, you're going, holy shit, like really? Ken Goodrich, Master Ken Goodrich, who's one of the USBA top breakers, he's been so criticized because he cuts the sleeves off his t-shirt. So they're saying, oh, Cobra Kai. And then he turns his belt backwards because it's hanging in his way when he's trying to do it. So he turns his belt backwards. So now they're criticizing him. That's disrespectful. And going, no, you're just criticizing the guy because he's winning everything. And Ken is a good friend of mine. It's easy to criticize people who are doing things you're not doing.
Yes, sir.
And my grandmother would break that with her eyes closed. Bring her on. Let me see. Let me see.
Yeah. I think they're secretly astonished by what you're doing, and then they just get salty,
Yeah, but I think I'm going to be a quick story. So one of my students who now lives in New Jersey, he was here in Dublin with me, and we put up some YouTube videos, and some people go, "Yeah, we've got a fat guy in our school that can break as well." I went, "You call me fat? Like, what's the point of this? What was the point of your comment? You call me fat? You saying I'm breaking the blocks because I'm fat?" So I sat down on a chair and I broke again. So now I've taken the weight element out of it. And the guy goes, "Yeah, but that was a pre-broken block." And I'm going, "What do I need to do to prove?" And my student said to me, he said, "Keith," he said, I'm really sorry." He said, "But," he said, "you're never going to win this argument." He said, I can see what you're doing, but this guy is going to win because he's always going to get the last word." He said, "He's going to believe he wins because he's kind of special in the head, whereas you're proving a point that you're not using your weight, you're now using pure technique." He doesn't get it. He said, "It just goes over his head." And he said,
Yes, sir.
"Forget about it. Let it go. Delete it. Oh boy."
There's just too much
It is hard.
pomp and swagger in the martial arts and ego and things like that, and all of that's getting, never feed the troll. Don't go in the comments section. It's always a horrible place.
Yeah.
Let's get back on track. So,
Yeah.
breaking, there's so many cool things to break. There's some things that I'm still wanting to try to break, like ice and, baseball bats. Let's start out kind of simple. What's the difference between breaking wood and concrete in your mind?
So again, complacency can take a huge, huge factor in this. Okay. So you can look at it and go, "It's only one board." And all of a sudden you'll hit it 5 times and it won't break. But what people miss is, and you touched on it earlier, is the indomitable spirit. Keep hitting it. Okay, I've hurt my hand, but I'm going to keep hitting. I'm going to, I'm going to get, everybody's watching. I need to get this. So complacency plays a huge factor when it comes to boards and blocks. People will break one board and go, "Yeah, that's easy," and then they break two and go, "Yeah, I'm definitely able to do a block now," because they think the confidence doesn't match. Confidence up there, but the ability's not up there. So now it comes to a block, and suddenly they're hitting a block, and I go, "Holy shit, it's not working." And then it happens. Then they figure it out. Then they suddenly go, "Bang, okay, I get one easy. I got one easy." You do it 10 times. My dad always said, "Break it once. Could be a fluke. Do it a second time. Now I believe you." So if I was to put say a patio block up in front of you and you get through it with a chop, I don't know, do you call it chop? Yeah.
Knife
hand chop. Yeah. So knife hand chop, bang. And you go through it. And you go, "Yeah." And before you even let your hand settle down, I'll put up a second one. I'll say, "Do it again. Prove to me that you can do it, that it wasn't a fluke, that wasn't a soft block." So that to me is where the complacency comes in, but also the level of skill and confidence, and they all need to match. So for me, I've seen a guy in 2007. I was at the US Open. I seen a guy, he was 6'7". He was easily 250, 260 pounds. He was a big guy. And he punched the 1 inch board, and then he punched another 1 inch board, and then he stopped and looked at both hands, and both his hands were broken on 1 inch boards. So there's an element where I use boards for confidence. I'm going to get the kids started on boards. If you're a new adult, I'm going to get you started on boards, because once you do one, you'll do a second one, you'll do a third one. It's not that hard. You don't need that much conditioning, and it's an element of confidence. We go to bricks and we go to blocks. Now there's an element of conditioning needed. Now there's an element of focus, breathing, belief. Now we've got to start trying to combine it all together, and give the people that. So it's a long-winded answer, I know, I'm sorry, but
no, it's great.
Bricks and boards, one of the scariest things I've ever stood in front of was a baseball bat. Baseball bats.
Yeah, what was that like?
Scared the absolute.
Weird shape. It looks like it could hurt.
But when you see guys do them, and then you finally do it yourself, and you're kind of going, "What was I so scared of?"
Yeah.
My condition, like I've broken all these videos, by the way. Anybody who's watching this, go onto my Facebook page. All my videos are on my Facebook page. Okay. So there's one where I'm doing 9 inches of concrete, so three 3-inch blocks, all pushed together, no spacers, and I kick it with my shin and smash it. That didn't scare me as much as a baseball bat.
Wow.
So that just goes to show you. I mean, the
Yes,
baseball
sir.
bat. So for me, the concrete was something I'm so used to, and it was easy. When the baseball bat, it scared the absolute everything out of me, you know. So,
It wasn't like an aluminum baseball bat, was it?
but see, here's the mistake I made. So for me, we don't have baseball here. So for me to buy a baseball
Yeah.
bat, I bought a baseball bat to try it, but the baseball bat, it was literally like 1 inch circumference on the handle on the smallest piece. But then when I went out to the States, they showed me ones that were like the handle was the thickness of your little finger. I was going, okay, now this makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a guy to hold one, you know, and I ridged hand through that one quite easy. You know, okay, if I can do it with ridge hand,
Wow.
I can do it with ridge hand, I can do it with shin. That's easy, you know.
Dude,
But
I'll
this
put
was
some
the
hair. Sorry, not to interrupt. I'll put some hair in your chest. Ridge hand first time. Every time my students try ridge hand first time, it's always a funny experience. Like, I'm gonna do ridge hand. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, go have fun. Oh.
we
Anyway,
we, we did we did similar at a tournament. I was after doing three patio blocks with a standing ridge hand. So there were
mhm.
three patio blocks, and I came through with a ridge hand this way. And a guy came over to me and I'm going to change my whole routine. He said, I really love the fact that you're doing ridge hand. He said, I'm going to do a ridge hand. And he did a ridge hand in his routine, and it didn't quite go well. And he came back to me afterwards, and his hand is under his arm. He's going, how's your hand? I said, fine. How's yours? He went, I think I'm going to have to go to the doctor.
Yeah. Well, I've been there too. You know, you do the break, and then you think you your hand, but you just play it off all cool because you don't want anyone to know. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like blood coming off your
Yeah.
hand. You're like, whatever, just hide it behind your back. Yeah.
Fingers kind of going this
Yes.
way.
Yes. But that's part of it. That's what makes breaking so cool is like that sort of badass, aspect of it. Like just tough it out and move through. Sorry, I interrupted your story though. You were telling us about.
No. Listen, you got to keep me on track, guys. I'm sorry because I know I can kind of do this with my stories, and I can kind of go all over the
Oh,
place.
they're
So,
great. They're great stories though. That's what people are, tuning in to hear are these
mhm.
like cool, funny stories and you know, I know you've had so many amazing breaks and stuff like that, but I'm sure there's a couple of failures, and those are sometimes the most hilarious. We had some people on, and they were talking about, um, some of their
Oh,
failures,
yes.
and they were like their best podcast episodes.
Yes,
I'll tell
sir.
you one of mine, okay?
Yeah.
So we were getting ready for a demonstration as a team, and we were just shredding all these little demo boards, and I didn't have much of a high opinion of their, durability. So I just told one of my students, like, hey, just pick up a bunch of boards. Let's see if we can break them, like, re-break them again. But he took them
Mhm.
and he just put them together, and the grain was all different directions. So it was like plywood, and I freaking hit
Mhm.
the thing so hard and it didn't break, and I broke my hand. And to this day, I got one big knuckle on my hand because of it. But that was, I was like in disbelief. I was like, wow, I couldn't believe that those tiny little like baby boards could be
Yeah.
so strong. So.
I've seen it happen, and it's funny. Go back to 2009. We were doing it was a fundraiser trying to help bring the Irish team to the US Open, and I'd contacted my dad and I said, listen, I really need some bricks. There's these they're called London brick. They're real brick, but they're really good for demos because when you get them right, they literally shoot off
Nice.
the little braking horse.
Yeah.
And they look brilliant. So, and I become quite accustomed to them, so I know them. And he says, yeah, no problem, no problem. So the day before the fundraiser, he shows up with bricks. He opens the trunk of his car and he said, there you go. I looked at these bricks. I said, what are these? He said, bricks. Not the ones I asked for. They were, have you ever seen the bricks they lay for paving?
Yeah.
Like cobble lock bricks. They're not much bigger than my phone,
Uh-huh.
and
Oh
they're
yeah.
like, I'm looking at what am I
Like a
supposed to
literal
do with it? And now,
interpretation of brick. Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, so I was
Yeah.
kind of, there was a few choice words came out of my mouth at that kind of, what am I supposed to do the day for a demo? He
Yeah.
said, you'll be okay, you'll be fine. So night of the demo comes, and the guys are there and they're all looking at me going, so we're all supposed to do, I was supposed to be the last breaker. And there's supposed to be 4 other breakers before me. They're all looking going, we're not doing it tonight. No way. We're not breaking those. So all of a sudden my Uncle Peter's on the microphone and he's doing the whole, intro, and he's doing the MC, and he said, okay, and now we're going to have some heat up to hopefully do some breaking. And the whole crowd was in just like, wow, disbelief that I was actually getting through these bricks. I didn't know how I was doing it on the night, but I think the adrenaline and the anger and everything, but it was just like focus, focus, focus. But then there was one, and I remember hit, bang, shit, bang, shit, bang. And as I'm hitting them, the word shit's getting louder, and everybody can hear it now.
Oh, no.
Okay, we're going to put that one to one side, leave that there. But it's just, it's one of those things where the beauty of breaking is that you're going to have a good day and a bad day. In my office, I have, we had these mini discs that we used to put into a camcorder, and we set them up and we were recording and recording and recording. And I think about 100 hours and of that 100 hours, we maybe have 10 minutes worth of good footage. So, it's one of those things, but just I want to touch on a point earlier before I get sidetracked. A point you asked me earlier was advice for people who want to try breaking.
Mm-hmm.
And my across everything I do, I say to everybody, get advice. If your instructor cannot help you with breaking and you want to try breaking, ask him. If he's a good instructor, he won't mind telling you to go and talk to you or talk to me or talk to somebody else. Find somebody who does breaking on a regular basis, who doesn't have deformed black hands, who doesn't have, fingers like curled up like this because they've failed so many times. But go to somebody and learn properly. Don't just see it on the internet, think it looks easy. And I'm going to do that. I can do that. Because I seen a guy try it with a baseball bat and his shin never looked the same again. So,
yeah,
it just, that I want to say to anybody who's watching this podcast, listening to the podcast, please, 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 I'm always available. You can email me, you can contact me on social media. If I can help you, I'll help you. But please don't be offended if you ask me to train you and I say no because you don't have enough money. Because at the end of the day, it's like, if you want to learn what I do, it's going to cost you money. If I can help you advance your own breaking that you're already doing, okay, I'll help. No problem whatsoever. I do video calls with a lot of people. I don't charge for it. And I just explain to them, this is what you're doing wrong. If you do this a little bit more, you twist your shoulders, twist your hips. I don't have to explain that to you guys, but what I'm saying is these are things that they're little pieces and nuggets that you can give people that will help them. And then they can progress to where they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, you go along, like your entire life. I think at some point people need to pay for that kind of professional excellence. So yeah, absolutely.
See, like again, I don't mean to sound bad on this one, but I charge my students to learn how to break.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't give it to anybody else to devalue what they've already paid me for. Mm-hmm. In the same way that my dad charged me because he knew if he charged me, I would appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And if there was, it's an exchange of energy. It's an exchange of energy. So if he charged me for a particular set of breaks or particular, and I paid for it, I knew I was going to complete it because I wanted to get value for my money. Absolutely. So it's just a way to do it,
So what are some of the best breaking techniques for beginners then?
Well, hammer fist, elbow, stomp, knee. Again, depending on the knee, that's very important because you have to remember there's a lot of cartilage, there's a lot of moving parts in the knee. Mm-hmm. But if you think hammer fist is something that people can kind of squeeze tight enough, they're going to get a nice hammer fist, it's going to be quite solid. So hammer fist is quite good. Elbow, using the front of the forearm, part of the elbow, making sure to avoid the point as always. Mm-hmm. So by making sure, I always tell people the last 3 inches before them. So from the point, measure 3 inches on the bone. Mm-hmm. And one thing I see a lot of people do, they twist their arm this way. So now they're pulling the muscles across the bone and they're causing damage. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you keep your hammer fist in line with your elbow, now you're hitting bone and everything's in correct position. Mm-hmm. And the way I show people is if you just cover your fingers here, I hope I'm not covering the mic, sorry. So you can still see the point of your elbow. Those where those four fingers are, it's the last 3 inches of your arm. That's the most solid part of your forearm.
Yeah.
So when you're going to strike, that's your area. And again, keeping your forearm in perfect line, keeping all the muscles exactly where they're supposed to be, is a great way to make sure that you don't get any damage and you don't get any dead arms. Because I've seen it happen where a guy turns his arm this way and he's hitting kind of crossed muscles, and it's just dead arm, and he's got one shot and one shot only. So stomp, side kick. Again, I try to advise people against using roundhouse kick, using the metatarsals of the foot, because I know Taekwondo do it, and on demo boards it's okay. But when you start going up a bit higher, metatarsals are quite soft, so they can take an awful banging.
Yeah, that's another one where, students say, "Oh, I want to do instep with my instep." And I'm like, "Okay, go have fun."
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it, and I've done it many
Yeah,
times,
see.
but it's not a fun experience. But if you had a shoe on,
No, no, no.
in
And
a self-defense
my
situation, it'd be fine. But
oh,
yeah.
obviously, yeah, but like you like for me, I always kind of bring it just above where your laces would be, so kind of just onto the bottom of your shin. If
Mhm.
you're going to kick anybody, it's a safer area to kick with, because coming from somebody who had a kickboxing background as well, if somebody checks your kick and you're kicking with your instep,
Mhm.
now you're going to have a trouble. You're kicking with your shin, there's a good chance it's going to sting, but you're going to get away with it. So again, it's keeping longevity, because people always wonder, conditioning and the breaking does not give you arthritis.
Mhm.
Everything works perfect.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? The
So,
biggest problem I've got is trying to touch my pinky off my thumb, because the muscle in here has gotten so tense and so big, but the
mhm.
rest of it works perfect. So, and full dexterity. So the conditioning regime is correct. So there's no deformities. The only way you can ever tell is when I'm really conditioning hard, my hands will be very pumped.
Yeah,
And there'll be slight marking around, especially here, this area. It's
yeah.
just a slightly softer area. So I'll have a little bit of marking. But other than that, like for me, I love seeing people push the realms of breaking and without getting crazy. So creative breaking, but without being crazy and without being dangerous, excuse me.
Hmm.
Uh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So our time is coming to a close
Yep.
here. I know you got things you need to do, and we unfortunately have to go here. But what are some of the most challenging breaks that you think like, or kind of more like expert level breaking techniques?
Unsupported. So
Or
again, if you think about, so I'm going to use my phone as an example. Okay, so if you think the phone is now held top and bottom, if you like, and
mm,
I'm breaking through the middle.
mm,
Yeah. There's breaks that I do where I balance the block
oh my
literally like
God.
this, and I break just the end off the block.
Yeah.
Then I also stand it up and I leave it freestanding. Now, there's
Speed
an
break.
element. There's an element to. Sorry, I'm looking around for something else. There's an element where if I put two phones up and I leave a little gap in between them, I
Hmm.
hit the first phone hits the second phone, and they both break.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
we're talking about blocks. It's not trickery, but there's an element of you're slapping things together and they're going to break.
Yeah.
Okay, if you do single,
Hmm.
you now got to punch or kick or hit whatever you're going to do, whatever strike. You've got to hit that faster than it can move. That's expert level breaking, and that's the stuff that I really like, because
Speed
now
break. Yeah.
speed breaking. So
When I tested for my black belt long time ago, my master, he took a board, he just balanced it on his hand like this, just a little bit holding, but basically just held it like that. And he said, you have to knife hand chop this. And I thought, oh, this will be easy. Oh my God, I was like crying by the end of it. I hit that thing like 7, 8 times. I could barely break it. Um, it is really hard. That is, yeah, I agree. Totally.
And sorry, I'm going to give you a quick one. I know we're going. Somebody challenged me recently. It was last year maybe. Excuse me. And it was how much damage could I actually do wearing an MMA glove? Because throughout the years of fighting, and then coming away from the fighting and deciding I'd had enough. I'd had enough fighting.
Sure.
They said to me, "Why don't you go into MMA?" MMA was only really kicking off here in Ireland around 2007. And I said, no, I'm not interested. Too many rules, too many bits and pieces. And if my unfortunate part is that if I get into trouble and you've got me in some kind of a choke, I'm going for your eyeballs. I'm going for your genitals. I'm going somewhere that I shouldn't go, and it's against the rules. But it's a survival instinct that I have because that's the way I was trained. So I put up a 3-inch block against the wall, and I punched it with a rip, like a rear punch, with an MMA glove, and I broke the block. So then, of course, the trolls kicked in. Oh yeah, what if it wasn't up against this? What if it was? So I answered the troll, and I put it up, and I punched it in midair and broke the block and done all that. But that video was then sent on to some top ranking MMA fighters. I'm not going to name drop, but we know one of the biggest Irish MMA fighters who's ever walked the planet. He has that video on his phone as well, and it's been talked about quite a lot. And I'm now getting questions about how do I do it? What's the conditioning regime? What's this? What's that? They want to know, but the unfortunate part, and we go back to philosophy teachings of everybody wants the view, nobody wants to make the climb. So they want to do that break, but they don't want to put in the time, the effort, and the condition that was involves. So for me to do that, it's not just conditioning. My wrist, my forearm, my elbow, everything has to be perfect line, has to be conditioned, has to be focused. So that's just one break in particular. And again, guys, I invite anybody who's watching the podcast, and I hope we do get a good few views on this, that go on, have a look. You put me on YouTube, put me on Google, put me on Facebook, all across all the social media platforms. You'll find something of me there. Excuse me. And if you want to ask questions, or please don't be a troll, though. Give me some criticism, or give me, one thing I will say, I've traveled the world over trying to find somebody who could teach me something new. It's very hard to do because of the fact that there's people out there who don't go to the extremes I go to when it comes to conditioning and breaking. But I'm always willing to learn, and I will step onto any matted area, any dojo area. I will come in, no t-shirt, like no colors, no belt, and I will just be a student. If you have something to teach me, I'll be a student. I'm happy to do it. So I love people to give me some insight. I'm happy to learn.
Well, that's the real mark of a martial artist, so having that empty cup, and I feel the same way.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you on, sir.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
If people want to learn more about you, where is a great place to start their journey?
As I said, sifufanning.com is my website. There should be links. If you look up Sifu Fanning or Sifu Keith Fanning even on Google, it'll bring you to all my social media platforms. It'll bring you everywhere. There's a few inactive stuff there, but my club page, my own page, they're all there. So
we'll try to put some of those links in the description below, guys. Absolutely. So if you want to follow. Well, it's been a huge pleasure, sir. Hopefully maybe we can have you back on at a future time to talk about something else. I know you've done a lot of martial arts, not just breaking, but it is a skill that is in high demand these days, and people are really excited about it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed that podcast, please consider liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as hitting the notification bell. We offer in-person, group, and private lessons at our facility in Kyle, Texas, as well as virtual lessons anywhere in the world. If you'd like to learn more about our programs, you can find us online at risingphoenixtkd.com.